Welcome to Football with Cheese. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Very excited. The Combine starts tomorrow. So make sure you are subscribed and enable notifications because anything happens to the Combine, I'm going to release videos. I'm going to try to do at least one a day. We'll see how it goes. But this video is going to be about Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst. I don't even know if I said his name right. I wish it was Brian Jones, but Packer writers and Packer Twitter call him Goody. So I'm just going to refer to him as Goody. It's just so much easier. He made some statements yesterday in a press conference, and he made some statements after the season, and I want to go over. I am a Packer fan, and me and Goody have had kind of a love-hate relationship. When he took over in 2018 for Ted Thompson did a great job as Packer general manager, built a championship team. He dropped off the last 4 or 5 years, wasn't as successful, so they made a change. I wanted Goody to get the job because of all the candidates. He was the most draft and develop style, build through the draft. But also, he was more willing to be aggressive in free agency. Ted Thompson was not. He was strict draft and develop. And he had a couple bad drafts in a row. When you do that, you don't have a good roster anymore unless you sign some free agents. Like Washington, for example. Washington needed help on the roster, signed a bunch of free agents. Oh, look, they make the NFC title game. And Ted Thompson wasn't willing to do it, but Goody has been willing to do it. He had an amazing free agency, signing Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs, both home run hits, probably their two best players this past year. The reason Green Bay wasn't as successful was the offensive line, defensive line regressed, receiver room regressed, Jordan Love regressed, but we'll get into that later. But one thing that I was not happy about when Goody said it's time to compete for championships, what have they been doing the last 2 years? They made the playoffs. They almost beat the 49ers last season, who lost in overtime in the Super Bowl. They led most the entire game. They almost won that game. They would have played Detroit in the NFC title game. They had beaten Detroit in Detroit 2 months earlier and basically controlled the whole game. So they could have won that. And they would have played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl and they could have won that. Yeah, a lot of shoulda, woulda, coulda. But the point is they were right there. They were playing well. Jordan Love was playing out of his mind. And this year, obviously, they lost their last 3 games, if you count the playoffs, so it fell apart. But it's a really odd thing to say because I thought they were competing the last 2 years. It made it sound like they weren't. Just a really weird thing to say. I know they're the youngest team in the league the last 2 years. That's because they built through the draft. They probably need to go out and get some veterans, help with leadership in the locker room. But really strange thing to say. But I have 2 real issues with Goody as far as a general manager. And that is he's done a really bad job with first-round picks. And he waits way too long for players to develop. And it has created some huge weaknesses in the roster. And I have 2 examples for that. We'll come back to the first-round pick thing. Darnell Savage is safety. He was a first-round pick in 2019. Savage was a bad safety. One of the worst in the NFL. In that 49er game I just mentioned, if Savage gets injured or sick the day of the game, can't play, Green Bay wins the game, plays Detroit in the NFC title game. He was that bad. The 2 biggest plays of the game that changed it for the 49ers, he blew it. One was a Christian McCaffrey play, one was a George Kittle play. He could have stopped either one, completely blew it. And Goody let him be the starting free safety for 5 years. You give a guy 2 or 3 years. And if they don't develop, if they're bad, not only like average or below average, but bad, it's time to move on. He was a terrible player. And when they pick up the 5th-year option, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And you pick up the 5th-year option after 3 years. So he played the 4th year and he played horribly. So they should have just cut him or traded him. Instead, not only did they not cut him and trade him, they put him out there every play on defense. And he was horrible. It cost him a chance to go for the Super Bowl. And the Jaguars somehow gave him a free agent contract. He just played for the Jaguars this past year. I didn't really follow the Jaguars a ton. I didn't really follow him. I'm sure he played terrible because he's a bad player. And the other one is Josh Myers. He was a second-round pick 4 years ago, a center out of Ohio State. The big problem Goody has, maybe the dumbest move he's ever made, was Creed Humphrey was available. I think he went the next pick to the Chiefs. Creed Humphrey might be the best center in the NFL. And what's crazy about it is Goody likes athletes. He likes athletic players. He wants to be the most athletic team on the field. And Creed Humphrey had the best combine a center's ever had. The most athletic center ever. And he passes on Humphrey, takes Josh Myers, who was coming off injury and couldn't work out. So you didn't know how athletic he was. And Packers are one of the most strictest team when it comes to injuries. So it was a big shock. They took Josh Myers, who's one of the worst centers in the game. He's the worst run blocking center maybe I've ever seen. He's terrible at picking up stunts, anything thrown at him. I know he's great in the locker room. The players like him. He can make calls at the line, but he's just a bad player. And he was playing so horrible late in the year that Jordan Love was on his back foot almost every passing play. Because they were scheming. Teams were scheming at Josh Myers. They were throwing stunts at him, blitzes at him. They know the weakness of the Packers was interior offensive line. And that is one of the biggest reasons that Love was struggling at the end of the year. His mechanics broke down. He's always on his back foot. And 4 straight years, Myers has been the center. After year 2, I knew he needed to be replaced. And Goody, just like Darnell Savage, keeps waiting too long to develop. He's doing it again with Lucas Van Ness. Let me get to that, actually. The other issue I have with Goody is first-round picks. Goody got off to a great start in the first round. 3 of his first 4 first-round picks were great picks. Jaire Alexander was his first pick ever. And then he drafted Rashawn Gary. And then Darnell Savage, total bust. Terrible player. And then Jordan Love. What a pick. Late first-round pick. So 3 of his first 4 were hits. Here are his last 5 first-round picks. Eric Stokes, cornerback. Horrible player. Quay Walker, linebacker. Terrible player. Has athleticism, has a few good games in there, but he's just a bad player with no instincts to play linebacker. Devontae Wyatt, defensive tackle. Flashes at times. He can look like a Pro Bowler one game, and then the next 3 games you never even hear his name. Does nothing. Very inconsistent player. Lucas Van Ness, who I just mentioned, edge rusher they got from Iowa. He's been in the league 2 years. He's done nothing. He's a decent run defender. He has no pass rush moves. He's very athletic. Christian Gonzalez was on the board. Corner for New England, one of the best corners in the NFL. Goody just seems to ignore corner. It's been a need pretty much since he's been there. Since 2018, it's been a big need for Green Bay. And Goody just seems to wait late in the draft to draft a corner. For some reason, Goody just doesn't value the cornerback position, which is crazy. It's a passing league. You have to have guys that can cover. Pass rush is more important, but you have to have guys that can cover. And his first pick was Jaire Alexander, cornerback, and he has not used a high pick on one since. Passing on Christian Gonzalez for Lucas Van Ness, who almost every expert, people like myself, knew he was a better prospect. It's crazy. Last year, he took Jordan Morgan, offensive lineman from Arizona. Jury's still out on him. He only played, I think, 6-7 games. A very athletic player, as usual. Didn't look so good when he played, though. And he projects to be a guard. And I don't know, drafting a guard in the first round, that's a position you can find those in the middle rounds. And Cooper DeJean was on the board. And if you watch the playoffs and the Super Bowl, Cooper DeJean was outstanding for the Eagles. Another corner that Green Bay should have taken. He had a pick 6 in the Super Bowl, broke the Chiefs' spirits, made it 24-0 after that pick 6. So Goody, this is a big year for him. He's got to nail the draft. He's got to nail this first-round pick. You cannot go 6 first-round picks in a row that are bad picks. Jordan Morgan, we'll see. He could have a good second year. Lucas Van Ness, it'll be a big year 3 for him, but he needs a monster jump because he's just not a good player at this point. So if Goody has a really bad draft, then they need to replace him because you cannot keep missing on first round picks. And what's crazy is he is so good after the first round. If you look at the last 3 years, from rounds 2 to 7, he might be the best general manager at drafting. If you just take away the first round picks. Now, first round picks are the most important, so you got to hit on those. But he does a really good job later in the draft. Tucker Kraft in the 3rd round, Edgerrin Cooper in the 2nd round. So he's got to figure that out. And he absolutely has to nail the first round pick this year. And I'll talk more about that as we get closer to the draft. And last thing I want to mention, we talked about Jaire Alexander. He was Goody's first pick ever in the 2018 draft. He's a great cover corner. He's terrible at tackling, terrible against the run, and he's never healthy. He missed a lot of games the last 3 years. When he's out there, he can cover. He's great at coverage. But he has trouble staying healthy, and from what I've read, now this isn't a fact, I just read it from some Packer writers on X. They hinted at he refused to play when injured, play through it. A lot of times he was questionable right before the game and was inactive. And a lot of questionable guys will just tough it out and play through it. So it's probably a good idea for both sides just to move on. I don't think they'll get much for him. Maybe a day 3 pick. Maybe a move up in the 2nd and 3rd round, swapping picks, something like that. They won't get a lot for him. But it's probably time to move on. But if they do, corner, it's a need anyway with Jaire. So corner becomes a monster need. They need 2 corners. Because Carrington Valentine and Keyshawn Nixon, they're good like number 3, 4 type corners, but they're not good number 1 or 2s, in my opinion. So they need to add some corners anyway. The way Goody's talking, I'm telling you right now, they're going to take a defensive lineman in the 1st round. I want them to take a center, maybe like Greg Zabel, North Dakota State, because I think the main thing is Jordan Love's got to get back to playing like he did the year before. And you got to solidify the offensive line. He can't keep running backwards. So I think offensive line's more important. I'm obsessed with offensive line. You'll see that as we go through the combine and the draft. But anyway, make sure you are subscribed. Turn on notifications. Like this video. Like I said, combine, I'm going to try to do 1 a day. We'll see how it goes. Once the combine's over, we have free agency. I'm going to do some previews on that. And share this video with anyone who loves football. We're still trying to grow the channel. We're over 50 subscribers. Let's get to 100 by the draft. That'd be amazing. And check out these videos if you have not seen them. And I'll catch you in the next one.